Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
What is up and welcome in. We are the One and Done Show. We are your fast break of information for college basketball DFS. I am Eric Romoff. You can catch me on Twitter at FantasyNav, and he is the captain of our ship, Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, how's it going tonight?
It's going good, man. We're one day away from consuming some more madness, right? After a pretty crazy weekend of watching the St. Peter's Peacocks make a run here to the Sweet 16. Luckily, they're not on the slate tomorrow. So, definitely got some really good matchups here. So definitely excited about that. And these prize pools, man, you can't beat them. We're trying to get our hands on some of this money.
Man, they really did open up these prize pools. There's another $20K to first out there on DraftKings. They got a number of different and seemingly new kind of game setups, right? New buy-ins, new prize pools. It seems like they're really trying out some stuff, despite it being a smaller slate, right? We've got the first half of the Sweet 16 kicking off tomorrow, at least from a DFS perspective, and that leaves us with 4 games to choose from. So maybe we start kind of at the macro level, right? With a smaller board to play with. How does that change the strategy overall?
Yeah, so I think the way you attack small slates, right, you got to pay attention to raw points, pay attention to the totals here. Obviously, all these teams deserve to be here. They've won a couple of games to kind of get into the spot. I think DraftKings made it a little more interesting by making the pricing super soft this week. You're seeing some guys that would be in the star category, the high pricing tier, and you see them kind of in that mid range. So definitely going to be interesting here. Value is super tough to find because at this point we kind of know who's in. The rotations have shrunk, so not a lot of guys under 4K that are interesting. But we could find a gem or two that could win you 20K. So we might dive into that a little bit. But for the most part, just looking at a balanced build here, determining what stacks to attack here, and how many players from each game we want to fit in here. Just trying to figure out what's the best way here to obviously make an optimal lineup. There's a bunch of different ways you can go here. I mean, we got the number one offense on the slate, the number one defense is on the slate. So how many in the game stack? Do we do mini stacks? It's just going to be a lot of things we're going to talk about today. So definitely an interesting 4-game slate.
Yeah, this one is super tricky because, like, on the whole, everyone got a discount, right? Like our price king for tomorrow's slate is in the mid 8K range, and literally every single player who's seeing any significant run got a several $100 price cut. So overall is pretty soft, but like you mentioned, the bottom end, the low end, there's not really a whole lot there. So it's not quite as plug and play as we've seen with softer slates. For me, it feels like we're really going to have to find ways to get creative in how we select and prioritize our games, and overall, how we build and kind of the overall makeup of our rosters in order to get those couple of edges. But generally speaking, that kind of middle ground is nice and soft and there for you to play whoever you want. So we'll keep that in mind as we proceed through to our first game to break down. It is the highest point total on the board, but the number 1 seed Gonzaga facing off against the number 4 seed Arkansas. Tell us a bit about this game, Mike.
Yeah, so this is the one everyone's going to want to attack, right? You look at the total here. What are we at? Almost 155 points here. Ken Palm likes this one. Gonzaga 82-72. For me, just looking at this game in general, though, I feel like this game going to play a little bit closer. Arkansas, putting the clamps down on Teddy Allen, who was really good in that first round, helped us win some coin there. But just a kind of a different style here for Gonzaga. You've got a team that likes to play with pace in Arkansas. They're 28th in the country. But they do it in a different way. They just play one traditional big, where Gonzaga likes to play Timmy as well as Holmgren here. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this game plays out. Obviously, a lot of people are going to flock here to stack this game. You start here with Gonzaga. I mean, Chet Holmgren, he's 8,700, right? Like for a guy that can score 60 fantasy points, that's a pretty fair price, right? So You look at it here. I mean, just guys just doing everything. Wasn't great against Memphis last round, 30 fantasy points. But I mean, we know every time we click it, there's a potential chance for that 60 burger. So, the thing about Arkansas, there's a lot of opportunity here. So Arkansas is going to want to drive to the basket. They're not a great 3-point shooting team, right? So, they're driving to the basket. Holmgren's got an opportunity to block some shots here, collect some cheap rebounds off blocks. So definitely someone to target here, obviously. And then you look at the guard here, Andrew Nimhart. When it is, when it's go time, this guy's going to play 40 minutes, right? So he's going to play every minute here. You're getting access to a really solid point guard. It's been great here. 19% shot rate, 27% assist rate. Can give you some steals here. Man, the price is back down. We were playing him in the the 8K range just last week. So he's got a nice upside here, and don't mind stacking him with a big. So I definitely don't mind that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Anytime that Gonzaga's been on the slate this year, we're usually making the call between Holmgren and Timmy, and usually there's a considerable savings between the two. Now we see Holmgren at what has to be close to his season low, right? We're usually playing him in the mid 9K range. Of the big three here for Gonzaga, Timmy got the smallest haircut. He's a couple $100 less than he typically plays. But you're not seeing that huge salary relief by moving from Holmgren to Timmy. So my questions here are really twofold. One, does that maybe make Timmy kind of the overlooked option, right? Most people are going to spend the extra $700 to get to Holmgren. And two, my favorite question, can you fire these two big men together for your builds tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely like to build differently, right? I like to play one of these bigs with Nimhart, and you definitely like to stack both the bigs together. I mean, you can, right? I mean, we've seen people win GPPs before by putting both of these guys in there. And now you're getting it at, a modest 16.7 compared to some other pricing that we've seen on these two guys here. So, I mean, I don't know what to do with Timmy here, right? I mean, the masses they're gonna flock to him because he's been ridiculous here in the tournament. I mean, 250 burgers here, and just been one of the best players in the tournament so far here. Yeah, you can put them together for sure. The problem is that Arkansas, like I said, liking to attack the basket. So while I do like Holmgren block up ability here, and Timmy's got some block upside here, the fear of 2 fouls here, right? It's going to be kind of tough here, especially with the pace of this game. There's more fouls, obviously, when the tempo's up. So, what's going to happen if one of those guys gets 2 fouls? Your night's probably going to be close to done, depending on how the rest of the game shakes out here. So, you can play both of them together. I don't know if that's going to be my strategy. I'm looking at Nimhart and pairing him with one or the other here. It's going to be interesting to see ownership, right? It's always tough in CBB to kind of figure out what people are going to do. Is the 8K price tag, is he just like everyone's going to flock to him because they feel like he's going to put up another 50? I don't know, right? Arkansas is going to give them a different style here. They're playing two bigs here versus, really just Jalen Williams on the other side. So how does that kind of shake things up? And is foul trouble going to come into play, which kind of makes, our guy here, Anton Watson, at 4,700, a little interesting. I mean, he hasn't played huge minutes, but if one of these guys hits into early foul trouble, you're playing a large field GPP. I mean, the guy is super talented. He could put up a 20 to 22, and no one would be surprised by that, and gives you access, obviously, to some other salary in some of these other games. So he's definitely someone that I'm looking at as well.
And the thing with Watson to really call out, one, he's kind of the last stop, right? Like, there aren't a whole lot of guys below his price point that should really be in a player pool for you. So very much so, he represents access to the most desirable game, and offers some of the more considerable salary relief. But two, in addition to being the highest point total on the board, we also have Gonzaga as the largest favorites on the board. So there have been plenty of times where Gonzaga's ran away and hide with a pretty big lead, and we see guys like Watson, like Strathmore get a bit more runs. So not saying that it's the most likely outcome in terms of the range, right? But it's certainly a few more outs. So put some good credence on the idea of throwing a few Watson darts for sure.
Yeah, I don't mind, messing around in some large fields using Holmgren with Nimhart and Watson. I mean, you're getting away with the Gonzaga side that Kim Pom likes to score, 80, 82 points or so. So, Timmy gets into foul trouble. That's definitely a way to get different because we're, in that $16 GPP, you're playing against a ton of teams. I know me and you were talking pre-show. Our strategies kind of might be attacking this thing a little bit differently. I mean, what are your thoughts on running 3 on one side in this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be my exclusive strategy tomorrow, but I'm probably going to be overweight on the field relative to how much exposure I land on a single game throughout my entire kind of pool of builds, right? With these smaller slates, especially with these larger prize pools and larger fields being on the board for tomorrow, I'm probably going to have a lot of builds that are all in on one game, filling in a few spots with some like points per dollar value. So with that, I'm trying to cover kind of all of my bases in that strategy. So I'll have a lot of 3-buy on the Gonzaga side and a lot of combinations that probably feel a bit weird, but if they hit, I'm one of 5 people in this 7,000 person field that has that combination. So taking a bit more of a risky line tomorrow, and that'll leave me with a lot of Bulldogs for sure.
For sure. And then just kicking it back over here to the Arkansas side, right? So, man, the pricing on them is, oh man, this is like really the I guess the talking point of the slate for me, right? They're getting paced up here. Gonzaga likes to play super fast, obviously, and Arkansas loves to do that as well. So you look at JD Note at 7,800. Man, the guy just chucks, right? 33% shot rate. It gives you a 24% assist rate, an elite steal rate at 4%. Man, the guy just needs to stay out of foul trouble. I don't know how many times. I mean, he fouled out in the last game on 4 charges. Like, that's how aggressive he is. So, man, when we talk about like Timmy and Holmgren not being complete locks, I mean, there's some risk here because this guy. A lot of these guys are just driving to the hole and being super aggressive. So it's pace up spot for him. Obviously, he's going to need to score for Arkansas in order for them to have a chance to win here. So you could see 18 to 20 field goal attempts here, and then obviously getting to the free throw line. Another guy that I do like here, and he's a little bit riskier. Obviously, playing against the 2 bigs is Jalen Williams. I mean, he's 7K, and we were playing this guy at 8,500. Almost averaging a double right now. Nice little block rate here. It's going to be interesting to see, his matchup because obviously Timmy's a beast on the low block. So if he can stay out of foul trouble, definitely someone to look at here. You give this guy 32 minutes on the floor in a pace-up spot. I mean, he should be giving you some solid returns here. It's kind of more of a contrarian play. I think a lot of people are going to want to shy away from him because he does have the 2 bigs to go up against. And, Musselman here, he doesn't like to play guys with 2 fouls in the first half. He's, they're one of the worst in the entire country at playing guys with 2 fouls. So definitely see interesting option with Williams here.
Yeah, I agree. These are going to be the 2 guys that get the majority of the attention for the Razorbacks. A lot of it has to do with just the price tags, right? Again, several $100s below the price at which we've been playing them through most of the season. So I think that's going to draw a fair amount of attention. Looking to the other side of this Arkansas rotation, a lot of guys that are seeing minutes but not really doing much with them. Does any one or maybe 2 of them in particular have a path to turning those minutes into some more productivity?
Yeah, so I mean the rotation's really really small here for Arkansas. I mean you're seeing Stanley Umude play every single minute, 80 minutes so far in the tournament. 6,100, right? Really nice game last time out. 23% shot rate. You can do a little bit of rebounding. Can give you some block shots here. So I definitely like him for a GPP option. Man, it's just always scary with some of these guys. I think he's a little bit obviously safer playing all those minutes and just being more productive than someone like Tony. Or the heartbreaker for me, Devontae Davis here. I hate even saying the name after I was in 4th going into like the last game in that big GPP, and he put up 9 fantasy points. But the guy's on the court, so is Tony. I mean, these guys are just playing 30 minutes, and in this spot, right? If one of them goes off here, I mean, that could be the key to the slate, right? I mean, Tony's 4,400. Davis is 4,300. You're not asking for that much. I mean, 5x for these guys, 20 to 22 fantasy points. And they have upside for more. We've seen these guys put up mid-30s, so they're definitely interesting options. I think what you're talking about, rotating these guys in, man, the 3x2 and sticking at either a Note or Williams or a Yamude with one of these guys could be super different here, and allow you access to a different path to get up the leaderboard.
So looking at those two cheapies, right? We got Tony, we got Davis, basically the exact same price point, and both of them have flirted with some pretty considerable upside, right? We saw Davis put up north of 25 points against Vermont. We saw Tony put up almost 40 points a few games back against LSU. Like, what is the circumstance by which these ceiling games are on the range for them tomorrow, or is it just they happen to get hot in that game and they continue to feed them?
Yeah, I think it's just flip a coin on what's going to happen with these guys, right? It really depends on what's going to happen with Note, right? Like if Note gets into foul trouble, which he's kind of been in lately, Davis is going to be more of a playmaker, and then Tony, it's not more of playmaking; it's just hitting the glass, getting a couple of block shots here, knocking down some open shots. But that's kind of his path to getting there. The focus is going to be so much on Note and Yamude and even Williams that these guys are going to get open looks and they're going to have opportunities to make plays, right? If one of these guys gets into foul trouble, then their usage rate is just going to go up. So especially Note, I mean, golly, like when the guy's out of the game, it's kind of like the Yamude show, and then Davis has the ball in his hands a ton, and then Tony's just on the floor. Most of them loves him, so. Yeah, I mean, even a three on this side and running it back with two, like I was talking about, a Holmgren and a Nimhart here. You don't mind putting him with Note, Williams, and even a Tony here, and you're getting access to a ton of minutes and a ton of upside from these guys. This game's going to be super popular, right? So the contrarian way is to maybe only take a couple pieces off of this game and look at some other games here.
So, but before we move off this game, I want to take a walk down narrative street. You mentioned Note getting into a ton of foul trouble, just charging left and right. Generally speaking, there's been a good amount of heat and pushback on how this tournament has been officiated overall. Do we think we maybe see kind of the same level of aggression from a JD Note, but the refs are more inclined to call it the other way than they have the first two round of games?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, right? I mean, how are they going to call it? If you looked at the Texas Purdue game, it's like, a billion fouls in that game. And then you've seen poor calls throughout the tournament, the TCU Arizona game. I mean, it's just been all over the place. So you just never know what you're going to get. That's why I think when you're building these large field GPPs, you have to play a narrative, right? Like, hey, let me play one that sees Note get into foul trouble. Hey, let me play one that has it doesn't have Jalen Williams in foul trouble. I think those are just different ways. You kind of have to walk down a path, right? If this game's going to hit 156, it's not always the way you think it's going to hit 156. I mean, how many times in all sports do we see something hit, but it went completely opposite, or there was maybe one piece that you didn't grab? That could be a Tony, that could be a Davis, that could be a Watson on the other side. Just by playing these narratives. So if you're, mass multi-entering, obviously you're going to want to have different lineups in here with different combinations. I think if you're single entering, obviously, depending on the size of the field, if you're playing smaller field, you play it more cash. Someone like Timmy's a little bit safer. Someone like Yamude is probably a little bit safer just because there's not as much foul risk. If you're playing like these large fields, though, I mean, you got to do different things. If you think Arkansas can pull the upset, you're probably going to want to play a 3x2 on their side. So just a lot of different ways to attack this. I think that's obviously why there's going to be a ton of lineups in these things. So thinking outside the box, and especially with the 20K on the line is, definitely a way to go.
Yeah, definitely, especially in these smaller slates, right? Like you really do have to tell a story with your build, because if you're not all in on the circumstance by which one of your plays gets there, then you're gonna leave yourself uncovered. We'll stick to narrative street, but move to our next game, and that narrative street is the Juwan Howard redemption tour. You saw him find that camera and embrace that young man after the Tennessee game. Now that finds the 11 seed Michigan here into the Sweet 16, facing off against the veteran guard play of the Villanova Wildcats. What do you like about this game? What pops off the page for you?
I mean, what doesn't pop off, we'll start with that, is the total, right? 135, and the fact that Villanova just likes to play in these ugly games, right? But you have to like the pricing. I mean, it's just asking us to play these guys as one-offs, or even if you think there's some chance that this game could go over, you could see a 2x2 in this scenario here. You're talking, on the Villanova side, you got guys like Gillespie, 6,900. More of a cash option all year. You're kind of going to get your 28 to 30 fantasy points, right? But we've seen him pop off. And I think you had a really nice lineup this year with him when he went for like 42 or something like that. So, that's the thing here is like, you got to build these narratives, right? Justin Moore, 6,300. I mean, come on, like for a 27% shot rate and a 14% assist rate. So somebody that can easily at this price point get into the mid 30s. That's definitely something that you want to look at. Jermaine Samuels has been great so far during the tournament. Really finding himself, was great last year. I'm not really sure what happened during the regular season this year, but I mean, this has been their key to success is, him hitting the glass here and making some open looks. And he's got 30 and 34 fantasy points in the first two tournament games at 6,000. That's 5X and almost 6X right there. So, I mean, there's a lot to like just based on the pricing in this game. But, man, like this game could certainly be one of the uglier games, and you could see it playing in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, so what you were reaching back for was a 45 spot against Providence for Colin Gillespie that made a nice little deposit into my bankroll. With this being one of the kind of uglier game environments, to me, the thing that always sends up red flags for is it's probably where we're going to find some of our lower owned options. So you talked about and categorized Gillespie and Samuels as a bit more of the consistent kind of cash game types. Is there somebody else for this Nova team that you think has the upside and might go largely overlooked?
Yeah, I mean, Eric Dixon, right? 5,300. I think you had a nice little run with him too earlier in the year. But this is a guy, right? You don't know what you're going to get, right? So he's super risky here. He's got a really tough matchup. He's going to be facing off against Dickinson, who we'll talk about in a second. 22 and 28 fantasy points in the first couple of games here at 5,300. That's okay, right? Man, you'd probably much rather play the Arkansas guys, but those guys are probably going to be a little more popular if at $1,000 less. So if he pops off for one of these 30 fantasy point games, because he's going to have to be on the floor. I mean, Villanova doesn't have any size. Like, he needs to stay out of foul trouble, and he needs to be on the floor. We saw what Dickinson did against Tennessee. So I'm expecting Dickinson to have plenty of opportunities for fantasy points. Whether he converts on those fantasy points is a whole nother story. I'm going to take a few shots on it. He's definitely someone, if I'm thinking like, hey, this game goes over, I don't mind pairing him with the Moore and maybe running it back on the other side, or even just playing these guys as one-off pieces is probably going to be most of my builds if I'm attacking this game at all. But this is definitely a game that some people are going to consider almost a full fade, but the price points here, man, you might want to take a shot at one of these guys. So you can see 5 or 6X from one of these Villanova guys, I feel like.
So speaking of that run back, you teed up the marquee guy for these Wolverines, Hunter Dickinson. Mentioned that he put up a 50 spot, almost 53 last time out against Tennessee. What is it about his game that gives him that type of upside? And is that outcome on the range for him tomorrow?
Yeah, so surprisingly, I mean, Villanova's been pretty tough against some opposing bigs here, but man, just the size here, man. I mean, you look at it in the shot rates there; it's almost 30% now. The rebounding rate combined is almost 32%. 5% block rate, so he can give you some stuff on the defensive end here. I mean, he has a big size advantage. He's had that in the first couple of rounds here. Tennessee's a tough matchup. Fulkerson, pretty tough defender. But at the end of the day, this guy's just a massive human being and just really dominating down low. And he's a great passer for a big man. So, you come to double team him, he can hurt you by finding the open guys here. Villanova's only 265th in block rate on defense. So, they're not going to challenge many of his shots here, right? And he should be able to get some clean looks, be able to work down in the post and his passing ability if they decide to double him. At 8,100, though, if they're going to decide to double him, he's going to be doing a lot of passing. His fantasy points are going to rely a lot or his upside is going to rely a lot on some of these guys knocking down open shots, which, man, it's pretty scary to pay that price tag when you have Timmy for $100 less and Holmgren for, Notate's just a couple $100. Holmgren's with, only 600 more. So I don't expect him to be popular at all. Could he put up 50? I mean, he could. Is it the most likely of outcomes? Probably not. But if you're playing a large field GPP and you get him at 8% and he goes for 47 and, someone like Timmy bust, I mean, there you go, right? There's kind of a path, kind of a narrative to get there.
Yeah, that was the first thing that really stood out about Dickinson for me, right? Like on a slate where everyone is getting their price reduced, we see him only go down by $100, and we see some once expensive options sort of right at that same price point. So it feels to me like he's the guy that's going to be overlooked as people are rounding out their builds. You mentioned that one of his skill sets is the ability to distribute to his teammates. Maybe looking over to the guard spots for the Wolverines, who do you think might get the lift from having those interior dimes dished out and can maybe return a decent value on their salary?
So Dante Jones, 5,500. He's back from injury here after the concussion. 20% shot rate, 30% assist rate. I mean, he should be a full go here. It's definitely a tough matchup with these guards, right? But I mean, it's the cheapest price we've played him in a long time here. So definitely don't mind him at 5,500. I actually wish he was more expensive so I could lay off of him, right? And that's the decisions that we're going to have to make, right? You look at someone like Eli Brooks. I mean, the guy's just scoring the basketball, gives you a little bit of assist upside here, just not coming off the floor. And that's what you're seeing with some of these guys. The price tags are coming down, and these guys aren't coming off the floor. So it's like, this mid-tier here is super soft. I mean, 37 and 36 fantasy points in the first couple of games here in the tournament. But man, you look at that Ken Palm deal here, and you're shaking your head, right? 71-66, and you're like, man, like that's actually seems like a lot of points for this game. So for me, it's more of attacking this thing as as maybe a one-off here. I'm gonna get a little crazy, throw maybe a stack or two in the large field. Nothing crazy, nothing like 3x2 like we just talked about. Maybe something like a 2x1 or 2x2. In the large field GPP, this game goes to overtime, and now all of a sudden you're in this, the low 70s, the high 70s, and man, these prices look super nice, right? I think also someone that's interesting is Caleb Houston, right? I mean, just playing big minutes, mid 30s minutes, 18% shot rate, can do a little bit of rebounding. Super talented here, flexible with that position, right? You can play him at guard or forward. He's 4,900. I mean, he's one of the cheap options that will give you access to a discounted Timmy, to a discounted Holmgren, to a discounted Note, and those other games. So he's definitely someone that I'm looking at, but really just for large field GPP. For me, it's Jones and Dickinson, and then Brooks more of a cash game play. Even though he's been so good here that I think people are going to take shots in tournaments here, but. Man, I just don't know. I don't know how this game's going to shake out. And I could see it being an ugly one.
It's certainly got the makings to be an ugly one, right? But, circling back to Dante Jones, I mean, this is a guy that is listed at $2,000 less than what we've been playing him at for the better part of the month of March. So I do think we're going to see him be one of the more popular options just because there aren't really a whole lot of guys below 5K that you want to consider as it is. So to get, the starting guard who's going to see a ton of minutes and is not that far removed from 30 and 40-point games at a 2K savings relative to what we usually spend on him, I do think he's going to be pretty popular. So something to keep in mind, right? If you need some points per dollar options, he certainly fits that bill. But, generally speaking, a lot of these secondary pieces for Michigan and for Villanova are going to be overlooked. So as you're rounding out your build, if you're feeling like you're pretty chalky, maybe take a look at some of these kind of uglier game situations and find a dart or two that is going to go overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mind it, man. It's just the whole matchup here with Dickinson and Dixon. Man, like the price, no one's going to want to play Dickinson, right? I mean, you're going to want to play the guys around that price point. And then for Dixon, like game log watchers, and I just don't see a path. I don't see Jermaine Samuels like he can't guard Dickinson, right? Like Dixon's going to have to play almost the entire game if Dickinson's going to play the entire game. Like it's just one of those things, right? So his path is a little more interesting. Can he get a cheap double? Yeah, absolutely. A cheap double with a block or a steal here, and you're looking at 25, maybe could come close to 30, right? A 6x spot here, and if you get a couple of mid-tier guys that are more popular, like a Jones and someone like Tony in the Arkansas game, they bust. I mean, man, you're just so much farther ahead of the field, but it doesn't feel good because I don't know what's going to happen if he gets 2 fouls. It's just gonna. I don't know. It could get super interesting. They might just try to play 5 out and try to make Dickinson put him in ball screen and just make his life hell on one side, and then on the other side they'll just say, you know what it is, right? Like he's just going to get booked and you just live with it. So it's going to be interesting to watch this game from from an outside perspective, just as a game in general.
It really is another interesting game to take a look at. It's kind of the old adage, right? The irresistible force,
meaning the immovable object,
immovable object, and the irresistible force. The number 4th team in offensive efficiency, queuing up against the number 1 team in defensive efficiency, as we have the 2 seed Duke facing off against the 3 seed Texas Tech Red Raiders. Double click on this one. Maybe start us with the Duke side because I think that's probably going to be a bit more popular.
Yes, I know Texas Tech's a trendy pick here. They're even favored right now in some places here by a point. So super interesting here, right? For the Duke side, right? We know what these guys are, right? But we haven't really seen some of the price points start to come down on these guys. So you have like someone like Paulo Banchero at 8,300. Who my dog apparently likes here at the discounted price point here. Just gives you kind of everything that you want, right? Rebounding, assists, shot blocking. It's there, right? It's just, man, against this Texas Tech defense who likes to slow the game down and likes to beat people up physically. It's just a scary spot, right? So for me, it's like, I don't, people are going to see Texas Tech. They're not going to want to play Banchero. In large field tournaments, it makes me think, I feel like I should maybe fire him up here. You know what I mean? He's got 40 fantasy. He's not going to come off the court unless he's in foul trouble. And Texas Tech's not really a team that's going to, create that on the offensive side. But they can draw charges, they can loose ball fouls and things like that. Yeah, definitely. But for Banchero, I mean, the key is here obviously just staying on the floor. And just being patient and letting kind of his game come to him in this one. I think what happens a lot in these Tech games is these guys just get out of their rhythm. The star players just get out of their rhythm, get silly fouls, get into foul trouble. So for me, Banchero's an interesting large field tournament option, right? I mean, we've seen what he's done this year, and at 8,300, the price tag is like, okay, well, he's priced to play, even though that's probably right for this matchup. If we're looking at a regular season, you know what I mean? But for someone maybe a little bit different off of him, if you're looking at Wendell Moore, we've seen the same thing, right? We were playing this guy at 8,500, 9,000 during the season. Guy had triple-double upside, it felt like, for the first quarter of the season here. Just kind of doing everything here. We got to pay attention here. AJ Griffin carried off the floor last game, and it looks like he's cleared to play here, but it's like, how much does he play? And so you got to think if he's limited and only playing maybe 15 to 20 minutes, so they have to wait for the news, and that's going to be probably the biggest news on the slate. Wendell Moore is going to kind of get some of that usage back here. He can create for his teammates. He can shoot a little bit from the outside. Can definitely attack the rim. The turnovers are a little bit of an issue. So Tech playing tough defense, man, definitely another contrarian tournament play. But I don't mind looking at one of these two guys. I mean, this is the kind of the ugliest game on the slate for as far as KenPom's concerned. They have Tech winning here 69-68. So, not even having either team touch the 70s, it's kind of tough to click that. But all you need is one guy to really set it off to make this game work. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if this is just a story that I'm telling myself, but I feel like specifically for this Duke side, we're not going to see ownership reflect how difficult a matchup this really is, right? Like, generally speaking, smaller fields, the guys that have name recognition that play for these blue chip organizations, it seems like the matchup itself doesn't get taken into account nearly as much as some of these kind of lesser known guys. So I'm expecting the Blue Devils to be more popular than they should be. I guess the question that I have for you is, knowing their games specifically, is there anyone whose game, at least isn't deteriorated as much by this slower tempo, by this tough defensive matchup?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, it's can hear you now if you're coming in a little bit clearer. So, for me, I think Mark Williams, right, 7,900. I mean, 38 and 42 fantasy points in the first two games. We always said if he played 30 minutes, this guy would completely smash slates here. As my dog continues to go ham here in our new house. But yeah, definitely someone that is interesting, right? For a large field. I mean, these guys, man, like we were clicking one-offs on these guys all year this year, and I don't see why we can't get one of these guys to go off here. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but if you're playing large field tournaments and these guys are lower owned, we should take a shot here, right? I mean, look at someone like Trevor Keels, and he's 5,300. Right? No one's going to play him at this rate. But if Griffin's going to be limited, I don't mind taking a shot here. I mean, if he hits a couple of open threes, I mean, this side is more contrarian than anything, right? So we're talking like narrative street. How do we win someone 20,000? How do I win 20,000? You have to find ways here, and I don't think Keels or Roach are really the access to get there. Roach is 5,000. I mean, Coach K's gone with the traditional point guard. But man, I don't know. I guess for me, it really depends on like when I'm building. Do I want to get to Banchero? I mean, I'm not looking to get to him. I'm not starting my lineups with him. If I'm using a random 3x2 in that first game, the Gonzaga Arkansas game, and I've got some salary here to play with, a Mark Williams or a Banchero. I mean, if I can make it fit and make it work, then I'm going to take a shot. Now, this is not a game I'm looking to really game stack, so this is more of a one-off game for me. So
before we move over to the Texas Tech side, we've got our guy Ted chiming in here saying what's up, and he wants to know who's in there working the background noise. What's the dog's name? Who does he like for tomorrow's slate?
Yeah, that's him right there. So he wants to tell you himself. Yeah, his name's Rhodey. He's a black lab. He's a year old. New house, man. We've been in here for like 3 days, and he's just I don't think he's found his comfort zone yet. So yeah, while I'm not talking, I'm muted, so so we don't have to hear him too much. But I don't know. He's not a Tech fan either, so we're Longhorns here.
Yeah, he can definitely tell that we're talking about the Raiders as he gets adjusted and accustomed to the house that Hoops built. So we will move on to talk more about those Raiders, the other side of this game. Obviously they've been playing this style all year long, so shouldn't be too affected by this matchup, at least not nearly as much as the Blue Devils. Who do you like from the Red Raiders side, Mike?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick here. It's going to be Kevin O'Banner. He's 5,600. He's kind of reverted back to the Kevin O'Banner from last year, right? We saw him with Oral Roberts put up some really massive games here, and he's started to do a little bit of that, 2 double-doubles in the first couple of games, 27 and 38 fantasy points. So definitely someone I'm looking to target if I'm having to get a piece of this game. And then Kevin McCullough at 5,400, right? Decent rates here. Playing good minutes here. Like I said, maybe I'm just a Longhorn fan here. So, but I don't know. I guess those would be the 2 guys if I have to pick.
Yeah, looking at some of the other options here for Tech, there are a couple of guys that are seeing decent minutes that from a pricing standpoint, I just don't think anyone's going to be on, right? You look at Bryson Williams, you look at Adonis Arms, like both of these guys are in that kind of mid 5K range where there are several options next to them of guys that were 7,500 or 7K a game or so ago. And they haven't quite seen that significant a haircut. So might be a couple of interesting spots for the Tech side to get different in kind of this, mid 5K range. Is that a viable line of thinking, or am I just trying to get too cute?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this game in general, right? It's too cute. As we talk about it, I'm like finding myself wanting to be detached more and more from this game. But we talk about it, right? You're playing against a ton of lineups here if you're trying to win 20K. So yeah, getting one of these guys at 5%, they can go for 5 or 6x. I mean, it's definitely, some people are going to bust, right? I mean, that's just the nature of it. Like, not all of these guys that we love at their price points are going to hit, and so if 25% of those don't hit, you're going to find some lineups where they're missing that. How many times have we had it this year where we had 7 of the 8? And we're like, if I just played the random, the random Gillespie on this lineup instead of, yeah, exactly. Like, it's just one of those things where you're like, wow, like, okay, that guy got there. You're like, I don't know how he got there, but he did it. And that's what you have to do. Smaller slates, like, man, the difference in someone that's 4 to 8% in these slates is massive. It feels like. I mean, on larger 16-game slates, you can find multiple guys at 4 to 8% that you can make work and be that 7th or 8th piece that you're looking for. So I think from the tech side, Bryson Williams, right, at 5,500. I mean, a 30% shot rate. The minutes just haven't really been there, but we know he has 5x upside, right? So should never be another low owned guy here. And Adonis Arms, just kind of doing everything here. I guess he's okay at 6,000. You just look at it, it's like, man, do I want to play him, or would I rather spend down and play in a Banner or a McCullough or a Williams? To me, he's maybe the forgotten man out of this thing, and I wouldn't be surprised if I look back and watch the video here and realize I should have played Adonis Arms, because that is contrarian, and he wins someone $20,000.
That someone is going to be me, because I'll have at least – 1 or 2 darts out there. Generally speaking, for tomorrow's slate, for slates like this, I am perfectly comfortable coming in last place if I'm not going to be landing in the top 5. So I'll be getting a little weird with these builds and being on some guys that I probably shouldn't have so much exposure to. But speaking of exposure, a game that I think I will have a ton of it on is our 1 seed Arizona facing off against our 5 seed Houston Cougars. Really interesting matchup, second highest total on the board. Are you with me wanting to really lean in on this game in particular, or are you thinking more of kind of one-off pieces?
Yeah, no, I want to lean in on this game. I mean, you look at the pricing in this game, and yeah, it really jumps out to you. You look at Ken Palm, 74.73. So definitely playable here. I mean, Arizona plays at the 5th best tempo here. And then you look at Houston, they play at 334. But, we've seen Houston get up and down in that last game. They're not afraid to get up and down here. I think when you're playing someone like Arizona, you're going to have to score some points here. Arizona's just my favorite to win it all. They just have so many different ways they can score. And definitely the play of Christian Koloko has been kind of crazy here. I mean, an absolute monster. I'm mad at myself that I didn't play more of him in the first couple of rounds here. He actually saved me in the 222 the other night with his massive game that he had, 54 fantasy points here in that TCU game. But, I mean, the matchup's tough, right? I mean, Houston has quality bigs. They have quality bigs that come off the bench too. So, he's going to have his work cut out for him. This is more of a newer role that he's in. Kind of being more featured in this tournament, I feel like, getting some more opportunities than he normally did during the season. You see the minutes are way up right now. And I mean, the guy just has massive upside at 7,700, right? So definitely someone that I'm going to have exposure to. And then Matherin, man, I don't know if it's because he helped me win $5,000 the other night, but actually both of those guys are on that lineup. But I mean, the guy just does everything, right? I mean, he can shoot. He's really aggressive. He can give you some assists here. He can get you some steals. I mean, he had 50 fantasy points last game. I mean, definitely has a wide range of outcomes just because there's just so many players on this Arizona team that could go off, right? But these 2 guys are kind of like the Note and Williams, right? These are kind of the big dogs here for them. And I'm looking to get as much exposure to them as I can, even in a tough matchup, right? I'm hoping that people, look at Houston and they're like, man, that 10th in defensive efficiency. It's like, yeah, but I mean, the pace is going to be up. They're going to want to play faster. There's, going to be some transition here, some opportunities for steals, easy layups. So yeah, definitely not afraid of it. I'm a little worried about it potentially, but if this game goes back and forth, then you're gonna eat maybe 2 Arizona guys if they pull this victory out.
So for me, looking at this Arizona side, the first question I think that has to be answered is, what are we doing with Kirk Risa? We saw him come back, didn't really do much in that first game back. I don't know if they were just kind of knocking the rust off. They didn't need him so much, but how do you go about answering that question, and how does that inform the rest of your Arizona exposure for your builds tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, he's at that price point, right? He's under 5K, just under at 4,900. It's not a great matchup for him. We know those Houston guards can really defend. They can switch. Krisa can sometimes be volatile and take some crazy shots here. We've seen Justin Kier be really good here, so wouldn't be surprising to see him. If Krisa's struggling early, get some more run here. So definitely someone that is on the radar here. Just price point and what he can do. But man, it's going to be tough for him to kind of get to that 5 to 6x level. But don't expect him to be super popular. The price point may get him over that, obviously, that 10% mark, but just because there's not a ton of guys under 5,000 that you're really looking to jam in here. You're going to have to get a few of these guys in here if we're talking about, Holmgren, Timmy, Mathurin, Koloko, like Note, all these guys. You're going to have to get a couple of these guys in. So I don't know. I'm going to be if you told me the field was 10%, I don't know, man, 2 to 5 for me. I don't know if I can take that many shots. Just coming off the injury, just not in a rhythm. But I could see you doing it and being my rich best friend and buying a house on top of the hill for me. So definitely don't mind it, but I'm not looking to really get there. I think the question for me on Arizona is, man, what's going on with Tabellus? Like, I mean, I've seen Koloko just absolutely be an animal, and what's happened to Tabellus is he's just kind of been that 20-minute guy. We early in the year we're playing this guy at almost 8K, right? Now he's 6,600. It's almost been a non-factor. I'm unfortunately going to take some shots at this because I don't believe that he's this bad right now. So probably going to burn some money here, but I'm going to stick him in some of my $16 to see if him and like a Mathurin stack can make something happen. So definitely super contrarian to do it that way, but we know what he's capable of. We've seen multiple 40 fantasy point games from him.
So you sort of answered my next question, or at least in part. You mentioned Koloko and Mathurin teaming up to yield a payday with a comma in it for you not that long ago. Is that your favorite pairing tomorrow, or are there maybe 2 different guys or a different combination of guys that you're going to have more of when you're stacking this Arizona side?
Yeah, I think a smaller field, I like that stack. Larger field with 16. I'm maybe looking at Tabellus Mathurin lineups, maybe some Krisa with Koloko. Dalen Terry is interesting, right? I mean, he's 5,800. Like, he's been so good. Like in the Pac-12 tournament, he was really good. Now with Krisa coming into the fold, like, it's just another guy that needs the ball in his hands. And I just don't know. But you feel like 5,800 people are going to be game log watching. They're going to be like, hey, we want to get some shares of this guy. I'm going to be underweight on the field with him too. So, yeah, I think the way I'm attacking is a lot of Koloko, a lot of Mathurin, some of my higher dollar entries here. And in the large field, I'm taking some shots at Krisa and Tabellus and just maybe mixing it up here with one of the top 2 dogs here.
So moving over to the Cougs, a lot to like about this Houston team, and specifically a lot to like about their price tags. Who are the priorities for you on the Houston side?
Yeah, I like all 5 starters, right? I mean, Kyler Edwards, 7,400, playing him at 8,500. Man, he's just looked really good in the tournament here, 44 and 34 fantasy points. Getting the price discount here. He's just a nice play overall. Jamal Shed is probably my favorite tournament, like large field tournament option of these guys. I mean, he's just been 28 fantasy points. He's just been okay, right? In these 2 games here, but he's 34% assist rate, right? So if he knocks down a couple of threes, getting you those assists, I'm in a pace up spot here. He's getting big minutes. He's just not really, breaking the slate at this price. And I feel like, man, probably going to be third or fourth ownership of these guys on Houston. So looking to kind of maximize that in the larger fields. And then I'm probably going to burn all my money on Fabian White Jr., especially after what he did to me against Illinois. Was non-existent until like the last 4 minutes of the game. And he dropped like 15 fantasy points in the last 4 minutes of the game with that ridiculous play where he saved the ball out of bounds and threw it in for an assist. If we were playing this guy this year, 8,000? 6,200 is just too cheap for what he can do. You're still getting access to 25% shot rate. He's a good rebounder, 7% block rate. I'm going to have way too much exposure to him. The matchup's tough, right? I mean, you can have Koloko should probably match up with Carlton here. And then you have obviously Tabellis here. White should be able to do some things here in this matchup. So definitely someone that I'm looking to lock and load, small field or large field.
Yeah, the pricing on Fabian White is just insane, right? Last time out, we were talking about how he was too cheap and nearly a lock button at $7K, and here he is at $6. So definitely expect him to be one of the more popular options. I guess in terms of construction for this Houston side, are you just kind of looking for a run back on your Arizona stacks? Do you think you might have some standalone stacks with the Cougs? How do you see yourself piecing these guys together?
Yeah. For me, I like a 2x2, 3x2. I know the pre-show, I don't know if I like that, but now just having talked to the slate, getting your opinion, just kind of thinking about it as well. As we get closer, you start to look at what are the narratives here, right? If this game goes over, man, there's going to be 3, 4, 5 of these guys go for 4x, and that of those 3 of them are probably going to go 5 or 6x, right? I really like this game. I think it's because it's just different from the first game. You know what I mean? How good is it going to feel at that first game if you pick the 2 guys, right, that really set it off and everyone else goes 4x, and you get this game right here and it's the hammer and it just goes nuts. You're just going to feel so good about that. We can't forget our guy Dante Moore here. Man, just 36 fantasy points last game. There's just a nice upside for cash in tournaments. Don't mind him here. Price is too cheap for what we've been playing. And then Josh Carlton. He scored 40 fantasy points before. The minutes aren't there, though. He's definitely a large field GPP option, a guy that I might take a few shots on in the $16 pairing as a 2-buy or 3-buy on this side. And Koloko's on the floor. We saw him out there against holding his own against Kofi. So don't mind it here, but man, just more of a large field option. Just definitely not touching him in any of the higher dollar and smaller tournaments.
Yeah, my favorite thing about this game in general, right, in addition to being not only the second highest total on the board, but I think it probably has the better likelihood to finish as the highest scoring game, but it's in that hammer spot, right? So I'm going to have a lot of builds where I'm late swapping because someone from my early game busted, or because I had a 5% guy that absolutely went off and now I need to move over to some more kind of steady cash game options. So ultimately, you can find me a few hours from this time tomorrow, just completely spinning the wheel on who I've got in from Arizona, who I've got in from U of H, because I sure do love having way too much exposure to a high-scoring game in the hammer spot. So you'll find me all over the place on this game. I guess as we kind of wrap things up here, any kind of broader thoughts about the slate, about how to go about building, maybe a couple of ways to get a little bit unique overall in your construction as we round out here?
Yeah, just finishing up. I'm really still in love with that balanced build. It's just really tough to get away from the Gonzaga Arkansas game, and also the Houston Arizona game, obviously with their totals being larger. But you cannot forget that this is DFS, right? So things don't always go. So a one-off piece or two from those other games, what I'm focusing on. But I think, man, if you're really trying to be different in a GPP, playing someone like a Chris Likes for Arkansas here, I think he's 3,800. Definitely someone that, who knows, man. You get a couple of fouls here. We saw Note. We saw him come in and had to play some minutes here. We've seen what he's done in the past. Someone like, Marco Santos Silva from Texas Tech with Mark Williams on the floor, like, I think that big body presence has surprised us with double doubles. He's been a beast before in fantasy world before he got to Tech. So, there's some guys out here that, under the 5K and playing the $16, you're probably going to need to take some shots on. And I think, like we talked about, as we kind of talked through everything here, it's, the way we look back at this slate, it's not going to go exactly how we planned it. So it's definitely in the large field to, get away from, some of the plays that might seem like complete smash spots and maybe move some pieces around and be a little different. So that's just my idea. And who knows, having said that, now we're just probably staring at a complete balanced build with all the guys that are projected to score 5X and they go ahead and nail it. So who knows? It's DFS.
Everything that we're expecting to happen is certainly going to happen tomorrow, right? That's how this game works. This is the part where we take my money and we turn it into more money. As we sit here, a little less than 24 hours from tip, 20 hours or so. Any news or anything that we should be watching out for?
Yeah, I think the AJ Griffin thing, right? Like, if he's not a full go, it makes some of these dude guys a little more interesting. But overall, that's really the only major injury concern. I mean, they say he's a go, but if we get limited minutes, it's whoa, he's usually playing mid 30s here. So, maybe someone like a Trevor Keels gets a little more interesting large field, or Banchero gets more usage. Jeremy Groach gets a little more usage in that spot. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, man, it's just really finding the best builds that you can make and just being a little bit different. Obviously, playing that large field, so we want someone to take home that 20K.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye out for the Griffin news. One thing that we can be assured of is that he will not be the only news that comes into play by the time we get the tip-off tomorrow. So the best place for you to stay up to date on all of the latest and get real-time analysis for how that impacts your builds and your approach for tomorrow, get over to drroto.com, get signed up, get into our Discord. Yet again, I've been saying it all season long. We are dishing out winners in there. That joke I made about taking your money and turning it into more money, it happens every single night in that Discord. drroto.com, get yourself signed up, and let's get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be